Welcome to Live, Life Inspired Views for Every Day. My name is Chris Meyer, and I'm a curious soul. The other day, I asked my brother Pete, a former chemistry and physics teacher, about a quote concerning energy, frequency, and reality. He can explain physics concepts like nobody, even though I grasp at understanding them no matter how many times I hear the explanation. Well, again, we went through the theory of Einstein's famous E equals mc squared, which is energy, and Max Planck's E equals hf, which has to do with frequency. And in the course of the conversation, he ended saying, what we observe outside of the self is reality, and therefore reality is what we interpret as frequency. And therefore, if we can focus on frequency, we can affect our reality. Clear as mud, right? So I asked him the only logical question I could come up with. Pete, I said, how can you say this in real life terms? Well, he replied, when we tell kids to calm down, and they do, we change the reality because we changed the frequency. Then he asked, what happens inside you when you listen to calming music like Gabriel's Oboe by Ennio Morricone? I said, I'm calm. That's because, he said, we are retuning our mental frequency. When we control our breathing to calm, that is retuning our frequency. After a little more technical talk, he had me convinced. If we can retune our inner frequencies, we can control our realities. He said that drugs can change our brain's function to calm if anxious or hyperactive. But routines like plowing by hand that my dad and grandpa did 85 years ago gave them opportunity to retune into self without drugs. The culture in those days allowed more natural retuning than today's societal habits allow. Today, our minds are overwhelmed with outside stimuli. It keeps us in a heightened state with no solitude or silence. Pete reminded me of the story he told me long ago about the executive who would go into a closet once a day, close the door, turn off the light, and sit in darkness and silence for 20 minutes. If he had an idea, he'd turn on the light, write it on a pad of paper, and then turn off the light and finish the time in silence. I thought about our schools, our kids, and young adults who are struggling so much with anxiety. How do we truly promote taking time to be still, to be silent, to retune? We hear so much about meditation and mindfulness, but why then are our levels of anxiety still so high in our country? Gordon Hampton said, silence is the presence of time undisturbed. It can be felt in the chest. It nurtures our nature. Hmm. We just don't get enough of silence, do we? I had a graduate student some years ago who lived in Fairfield, Iowa. Do you know what is in Fairfield, Iowa? The Maharishi schools, preschool through university. Elizabeth Titsa, my student, had lived in that city for a long time, but had never visited those schools. So, for her graduate project, she visited the Maharishi Elementary School. She said from the minute she stepped inside, she felt an immediate sense of calm. The entire student body and the feeling you got as you walked around was so peaceful. Elizabeth learned that every morning the entire school sits for 15 minutes at their desks with their eyes closed in silence. They end the day in the same manner. 15 minutes at the start and the end of the day. Just think about the inflammation crisis in our country. I wonder if inflammation would go down were we to adopt that practice. Those minutes could improve our health and mental well being at the same time. I found a quote that really states what can happen when we think of intentionally retuning our frequency. It goes, may your vibes shift the whole frequency of the room you walk in. I can't attribute that quote to anyone, but it sure inspires me. Erica Badu said, I think that people who vibrate at the same frequency vibrate toward each other. They call it sympathetic vibrations. Wow. Does that explain why we can have some unexplainable connection with certain people? Pete ended my physics lesson with, everything is energy. Yes, energy and reality is physics, but it is also metaphysics, which is philosophy. Your reality is thought. It is an idea that you believe. There are a couple of tools that can be used to retune our frequency. One is understanding and choosing which thoughts to focus on. That affects our emotions. The other is finding a mantra to repeat while we sit in silence. It clears our minds. Like from the children's book, The Little Engine That Could. The little engine repeated, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Changing our reality by changing our frequency. Heavy thoughts for a simple purpose, that of living with more peace. This week, on your bathroom mirror, write, a dose of silence can bring me calm and peace. Then try 15 minutes, 2 times a day. Join me next Monday for Live, Life Inspired Views for Every Day. I'm Chris Meyer, and I'm a curious soul.